Money. In the weekly program Current Affairs, now we bring you a discussion on Union Cabinet approval for PM-Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojna. The participants are Narendra, Tanja, energy expert, and Divyanshu Jha, Deputy Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Anubha Rohatgi is moderating the discussion.
The Union Cabinet has approved the rooftop solar scheme, PM-Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojna, launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi last month. To discuss the various aspects of the scheme, I am now joined by Mr. Divyanshu Jha, Deputy Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Mr. Jha, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Mr. Jha, the PM-Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojna, which has an outlay of over 75,000 crore rupees, aims to install rooftop solar and provide up to 300 units of free electricity every month to 1 crore households. For the benefit of our listeners, can you elaborate on the key elements of this scheme?
The announcement of the PM-Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojna, with a target of installing 1 crore rooftop solars in households across the country. This is a major upscaling of our ambition in terms of distributed renewable energy. And for the consumers themselves, the central financial assistance or the subsidy that a household is eligible for has been demarcated as follows. Essentially, for the first 2 kilowatt systems, usually cost something around 1 lakh rupees. The government will give as a subsidy of around 60,000 rupees. And for a system of up to 3 kilowatt system rooftop solar capacity, the subsidy support will go up to 78,000 rupees. For rooftop solar systems that are of larger size, so anything more than 3 kilowatt, they will still be eligible for that maximum subsidy of 78,000 rupees. Besides this, there's also a provision for the common electrification of common facilities of Residential Welfare Association, wherein subsidy support of 18,000 rupees per kilowatt will be provided to RWAs and group housing societies to basically put rooftop solar for their common facilities.
Mr. Jha, this isn't the first scheme to encourage rooftop solar. In fact, the government had initiated the rooftop solar program in 2014 with the goal of attaining a total installed capacity of 40,000 megawatts by 2022. So is the present scheme a modification of that scheme? And why was this need felt to bring in this new scheme now?
Yes, the rooftop solar scheme has been in conception in some form or the other since 2014. But in terms of the ambition and scale, we had a target of around 40 gigawatt in 2022, which was later extended to 2026. The reason why this signals a major shift is essentially on two reasons. While right now the Indian rooftop solar deployment overall is around 11 gigawatts, this scheme intends to add 30 gigawatts only in the residential sector. That is almost 2.5 times of whatever has been achieved till now in a very short period of time. And this, mind you, only in the residential sector. If you add government and commercial and industrial installations, we expect this overall capacity to be added by 45 gigawatts or so. This goes way beyond the 40 gigawatt target that was established earlier on. And secondly, this has made it as a centerpiece, the residential segment. So the residential segment that is up to 3 kilowatt, which is the bulk number of consumers. Most of the residential consumers in India are less than 3 kilowatt of sanctioned capacity. So the intent to bring rooftop solar closer to the lives of crores of Indians and at a scale that has not been done till now. In terms of the change of approach, there has been a very radical shift in the way we are going to implement the scheme from what it has been till now. Till now, the approach has largely been led by distribution utilities and state governments. We used to follow a tender-based approach, and essentially that ended up being a very long-winded process that was very detached to the normal experiences of consumers on the ground. The major shift in the approach now is more in the sense of letting the market forces have a free play to allow multiple vendors and companies to come into the market and sell their products in rooftop solar. And the consumer has been given an entirely free choice to exercise, to decide what kind of rooftop solar system he or she wants to install. And the central government will ensure that the subsidy as calculated as per the national benchmark is transferred to the consumer for his or her benefit. This is a very radical change in the approach and the method that this will be implemented through a very strong IT-based system, which is the PM-Surya Ghar National Portal.
I also read that there is a collateral-free loan feature in this particular scheme. What is that?
That is actually a very significant pillar of scheme in itself. The major reason why we have had some issues with rooftops being taken up is the initial expenditure that the consumer has to bear And that has led to a muting of the response of the consumers themselves. To allay this, along with the promise of the central subsidy of cost, a large number of banks are now offering collateral-free loans. These are standardized rooftop solar products that are collateral-free and that will be available at around 7% of interest rate for the consumers. So if a consumer does not want to bear the upfront cost immediately, he or she can bear, let's say, 10% of the overall cost in the beginning, the remaining 90% being fronted by the concerned bank at a 7% interest rate. Out of the 90%, the central subsidy gets released once the plant is commissioned, and the remaining 30% amount gets repaid over a 10-year tenor with very low and very easy monthly installments. So because of the low interest rate regime available in these loan products, we feel that now the consumer's hesitation in bearing that upfront cost will be reduced quite significantly.
The scheme aims to provide free electricity to 1 crore households. When we talk about households, what is the eligibility criteria in order to qualify for the subsidy under the scheme?
There is no eligibility criteria as long as you are a residential consumer who draws electricity from the grid. So you have to be a grid connected, you have to be a DISCOM consumer, so to speak, and you have to be a residential consumer. But as long as you have an electricity connection to the DISCOM, you are eligible under the scheme. There is no limitation or no restriction on you accessing the benefits of the scheme.
Mr. Jha, often we have seen that even though people are aware of government schemes and they want to avail of them, yet they don't know how to apply or whom to approach. So how can someone apply for the PM-Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojna? Is there a portal for it?
We have a national portal for rooftop solar, which is PM-Surya.gov.in. This is the one-stop shop for all matters related to installation of rooftop solar and for gaining the benefits of this subsidy scheme. Once a consumer goes to this portal, he or she can register on the portal using the consumer account number that they have with the DISCOM. And basically, once they are logged in, they can choose a vendor, they can enter into direct engagements with them, get their plants installed, get their clearances from the DISCOM approved, and on that same portal, fill their bank account details and get the subsidy directly into their account. So the single portal for this is PM-Surya.gov.in.
I was looking at this portal for the discussion and, I saw that it gives details, like you said, that the application process, subsidy structure, state-wise impaneled vendors, which is useful for households in their decision-making process. But it also has dynamic features like, such as the total number of beneficiaries, capacity added, capacity in pipeline, etc. that gives a real-time progress of the scheme.
Yes, so the portal has been designed with the intention of being the single repository of all rooftop solar related processes. As you would be aware, rooftop solar installations in the state have very varied experiences in terms of who to approach to the DISCOM, who to go to and talk to, clearances, different kinds of regulatory architecture. So we wanted to harmonize the consumer experience. And we also wanted to onboard all the vendors across the country so that there is a common marketplace for rooftop solar installations. And that is what we have worked on. The national portal right now is in a particular shape and form, but we are continuously working on adding many new features. One of the key features that we are working on, in fact, allows a consumer to see his rooftop through a GIS-based platform and to actually be able to size and design his rooftop solar installation based on his electricity consumption history and his insolation data as to how much shadow is there on his roof and so on. So a lot of value-added services will be provided on this portal in due course of time. And we'll also build a very strong coordination with the banking network to make sure that the consumers have a very hassle-free and very easy access to the scheme through this portal.
At this point, let me welcome Mr. Narendra Tanja, energy expert, to this discussion. Mr. Tanja, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Tanja, first off, how significant is this PM-Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojna from India's energy requirements point of view?
Well, I think it's very significant, for the following reasons. Number one is, of course, renewable energy is very important for us in order to, in our efforts to meet the net zero target. And at the same time, I think, which is actually more important, that this will basically take India firmly in the direction of distributed solar across the country, and not limited only to the urban spaces, but in fact, maybe the rural spaces are going to be the bigger beneficiary. It's basically, in simple terms, is the whole scheme means aapka apna bijli ghar. When you set up this thing on your rooftop, that means it's your captive power station. And imagine empowerment it does to the people in the rural areas, because you have your own powerhouse, very small but your own, and it's kind of a renewable energy, is almost free. And then at the same time, you can plan your budget, you can plan your other economic activities based on that. Maybe in future you can even start cooking using that, and so that you can reduce your dependence on fossil fuel for that. So I think if you look at very carefully, and we are talking 2024, but if you take a view of the scheme, let's say over the next 4 to 5 years, this is going to be revolutionary. It will revolutionize the way you produce power, especially if you are an individual or a household, and especially if you happen to be in a far-flung area. So I think it's a great beginning. The whole thing is very revolutionary, and it's important that that we disseminate the information, convey it to the people as powerfully as we can, so that they can take full advantage of it. The way I look at it is, we are now entering the age of distributed solar power in India. We have done very well so far, but majority of that has been in kind of in a more centralized concept, where we set up the big plants and all that, then the power generated goes into the grid and so on and so forth, which is fantastic. But the point is that in a country like ours, which is, very vast, and where we still have a large number of people living below an energy poverty line. I mean by that they have access to electricity, but maybe not sufficient amount of energy. But this will make this available to them, and at the same time on their terms, on their condition, and on their own rooftop.
Mr. Jha, Prime Minister Modi has said that this initiative promises to light up lives without burdening pockets. So what are the financial gains for the beneficiaries of this scheme?
Multiple. In fact, when we were analyzing the benefits for consumers that access these benefits through the scheme, one is, of course, the direct subsidy support that the government is providing of up to 78,000 rupees for an overall system that might cost something like 1.5 lakh rupees. That is benefit number one. There are certain state governments which are adding their subsidy components to various extents. That's component number two. Component number three comes from the low interest rate loans that are being given to the households under this, which reduces the easy monthly installments quite significantly. The fourth is the benefits that the household get from the electricity that they do not draw from the grid. So the state tariffs, electricity tariffs for households range from anywhere between 3.5-4 rupees to anything up to 8-9 rupees or so for the higher segments, or even more. For a household that generates up to 300 units, so a 3 kilowatt plant generates approximately 300-350 units in decent conditions. So for such a household to bring down the net electricity tariff from by 300 units actually brings the household to the lowest tariff slab, or even more to a zero tariff slab. And lastly, these rooftop plants are not just for the households themselves. If the households end up consuming less than what they have installed, so a household which has put up a 3 kilowatt plant and has consumed for some reason around 100 units, the surplus unit of around 200 units can actually be sold back to the DISCOM. So different regulations in different states count this differently. But essentially, the DISCOM is able to buy this surplus power from the households and gives back either credits or money to these households. So we feel that given the scenario right now, and given that this system will be there for at least 25 years, I think over a period of lifetime, this system returns its investment many times over.
Mr. Taneja, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, while announcing this scheme in the interim budget last month, had said that it will provide employment opportunities and create jobs. So what kind of opportunities are we looking at here? Apart from, of course, one is the direct benefit to the households who would be availing of it. But what about the larger picture?
Well, when you look at the larger picture, you see the world is now entering into the age of electricity. I mean, we had coal, then we have fossil fuels, and now wherever you go, people are talking of electric vehicles, factories running on electricity 100%, kitchen running on electricity 100%. And at the same time, small, micro and super micro economic units running on electricity. So that means, you see, especially when it comes to our small towns and rural areas, I mean, this is going to be a big game changer. Because so far, when you want to start some business, when you want to start something, the biggest challenge is always that, power supply. Power supply is there, but at the same time, economics may not work for you, or you may find it very expensive, or you may also have sometimes some problems in terms of, accessibility and so on and so forth. But this solves that problem. You may be a farmer, you may be a small businessman in a rural area, or you may be a kind of underprivileged or marginalized household. But if you now with this, subsidy that the government is offering, and at the same time, you have access to electricity, but at the same time, if you have surplus electricity, which you can sell, or you can set up your own micro unit, industrial unit, small unit to make whatever you think you can. So I think that eventually, if you look at the number of jobs it's going to create, it's going to be in millions. Initially, of course, the government has talked about 17 lakh new jobs. But my own sense is if it's implemented properly, depending on state to state, depending on, of course, part of the state to the part of the state, and also depending on literacy and other push and initiative that might be needed, I think this can be a big game changer in terms of changing the employment landscape. So I think, with this scheme, if the state government, they also launch such initiative where people are trained how to take advantage of it, how to set up your own micro units, or how to sell the surplus power and so on and so forth, I think that's going to be a big game changer. So potential, if you ask me, when I did my back of the envelope numbers yesterday, to me it looks like it's more than just 1.7 million. It can generate at least 5 to 7 million jobs in the coming years.
Mr. Jha, would you like to add to what Mr. Taneja just said about, the government estimates about 70 lakh jobs could be created. Do you want to add to that what kind of jobs we are looking at, what kind of employment opportunities we are looking at?
Assessment is, Mr. Taneja has spoken very well, that distributed solar is really the future in terms of where the new green jobs are going to come from for the economy. And based on our assessment, the amount of employment that is generated by distributed solar is many times more than anything that is generated by, let's say, utility scale solar plants. The nature of these jobs are also highly differentiated and very equitable in the sense that it enables thousands and lakhs of ground level installers, technicians, fitters who can really upskill themselves through skill development courses, through recognition of prior learning, and essentially become rooftop accredited solar installers. So we see a lot of potential of people who have done basic civil and electrical work to really upscale themselves and to enter into the entire supply chain of rooftop solar. So rooftop solar includes, there are many employment possibilities up the chain. This scheme explicitly says that it will only use domestic cell and domestic modules, which leads to a lot of demand generation for domestic manufacturing, supply chain for inverters, balance of systems, as well as Mr. Taneja said, a lot of people who will help households to kind of access and to understand this better, to provide ancillary services like battery storage and kind of helping households maintain and keep an uptake. There is a lot of potential in the O&M segment, which is a continuous work item that might develop as a separate market on its own. So the possibilities are diverse, and I do feel that we have been a little conservative in our estimates, but we are very excited about the employment possibilities that will come out of this.
Mr. Jha, though the scheme mainly focuses on individual households, but as I was reading the features of the scheme, a model solar village will be developed in each district of the state. There is also provision for urban local bodies and Panchayati Raj institutions to benefit from it. Can you elaborate on that?
Till now, rooftop solar has been largely an urban phenomena opted by households that are much higher in the economic strata. I think this scheme has deliberately tried to see how rooftop solar can be a major part of lifestyle for the rural context is very important. And we feel that there is a lot of potential and scope for distributed solar and rooftop solar in the rural context as well. And essentially, in order to push that vision forward, one of the key items of the scheme is to choose a village in every district and to kind of see what a model green, entirely renewable energy powered village looks like. So we'll be working on with the states and with district administrations across the country and choose these villages and develop these as lighthouses for future examples to come through. And this we aim to achieve through a lot of ground level convergence with various stakeholders, beneficiaries. The incentive for urban local bodies and Panchayati Raj institutions has been built in this time to recognize the fundamental role that these entities play in directly reaching out to the consumers on the ground level. We wanted to shift away from the vision that it's an electricity department kind of a scheme. It's no longer, it's a very Jan Bhagidari focused scheme now. And while the DISCOMs remain key elements in our outreach towards households, urban local bodies and Panchayati Raj institutions, we feel are key partners in this muhim for bringing in large scale participation and to ensure that there is good convergence between vendors, financial institutions, consumer interest, and I kind of bring them together and to install rooftop solar in their own vicinities. And we hope that ULBs and PRIs take it up in a competitive mode and try to maximize rooftop solar deployment within their own areas.
Mr. Taneja, the PM-Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojna is an important part of the Modi government's push for green energy. PM Modi has called it a game changer for bringing sustainable energy solutions to every home. India aims to generate 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030 and it is committed to achieve net zero emission by 2070. How significant is the scheme to achieve this goal and in transitioning to a greener future?
Well, very significant. You know what we have achieved so far, and we have really walked the talk, whatever commitment we made to the global community in terms of Paris, climate deal, and later on, Sharm el-Sheikh, and now, of course, recently in the UAE. So we are walking the talk as a nation. And in fact, in renewable energy and solar in particular, we are doing better than most developed countries. But that said, at the same time, so far we have achieved whatever we have achieved mainly in the context of, for instance, setting up these big plants and then, generating solar power and connecting it with the grid. But I think that if you ask me, because I'm a strong supporter for a country like India of distributed solar, because when you go for distributed solar, basically you are democratizing the solar space. And this is what exactly this scheme is going to do. On the one hand, of course, even more firmly in the direction of green economy and green agriculture and green rural India. But at the same time, we empower people. I mean, imagine in this scheme, for instance, if you make sure that you make sure that, let's say, prioritize women, that 50% of these initiatives are going to be through proper training and all that of women in the rural areas, for that matter, even in the urban and the semi-urban areas. Imagine the kind of change it's going to bring, involving the local colleges and universities and departments of physics and Department of Electric, etc., into the whole thing, or for that matter, the local entrepreneurs or the businessman. My own sense is one Adarsh village is not enough. Because our districts can be very large in India. There are districts in Rajasthan which is actually much bigger than many states in the Northeast. So therefore, my own sense is that, it's a great beginning, but we need to be kind of set up at least 5 such villages, maybe 1 fully supported by the government and the 4 kind of co-opted or sponsored by local initiatives. Because as I said that, I'm not looking at only in terms of Muft Bijli or only solar. This can be a catalyst for completely transforming the economies of these districts or for these areas, completely transform the agriculture sector. It will transform, let's say, the way our women live. It will transform, for instance, how the micro industry units are set up. Women, there are lots of educated women in rural areas, semi-urban areas, they can just teach, because once you have access to reliable electricity, you can actually be a tutor and you can teach students 1,000 kilometers away from you. For instance, what's happening in Bangalore or Gurgaon and Pune, you can do from a small village in Uttar Pradesh. That's my home state. This is a great move. But as I said, this is just the beginning. And if we really bring in other departments and other initiatives and panchayats and the local bodies and all into it, this is going to be a major. In 10 years from now, if we implement it well and if we involve other players and actors, this actually would be the biggest transformation ever. It's not only about solar. It will not only eradicate energy poverty. It will actually eradicate poverty as a whole. And you will see these villages once again. If you look at India's ancient history, our villages were the main production centers. Our villages were like factories. They were producing, and they were the strength of backbone of India's economy. We can go back there again, empower youth, empower people there. Each village then becomes a kind of industrial and economic powerhouse. Imagine the kind of potential it has, and imagine the kind of power is going to produce at the end of the day. I'm not talking electricity, I'm talking economic power for the country. And we will get to our Viksit Bharat agenda much faster than we actually envisage at this stage. So this is not only a game changer. Game changer is a very small word. This is revolutionary, but what we need to democratize it in such a way, individuals, colleges, communities, entrepreneurs, this panchayat, they all can chip in and eventually take it over and take it to the right destination.
Mr. Jha, a robust manufacturing infrastructure, modern development facilities and R&D will play an important role in the implementation and success of this scheme. Where do we stand in these areas and what more needs to be done?
One of the key agenda points for the ministry is also to ensure Atmanirbharta. This is one of the areas, especially in the solar PV module manufacturing situation, where we have made rapid strides in the last couple of years. And the rooftop solar scheme itself, as I said, would generate around 30 gigawatts of demand for solar domestically manufactured solar cells and domestically manufactured solar modules. The current regulatory architecture also mandates that we must use solar modules of a certain efficiency or higher, which is pushing Indian corporates to continuously improve their technologies and to kind of move to a higher level of efficiency offerings. The manufacturing capacity in the country has picked up massively in the last couple of years because of various proactive measures that have been taken to ensure that low-cost modules are not dumped by other countries here. And as a result, we are expecting that by the next couple of months, the cell manufacturing capacity, which was extremely low, would now stand at anything between 15 to 20 gigawatts per year. And the module manufacturing capacity, which we had a fairly decent amount, but right now we are expecting that by December, we would have that in the range of around 50 gigawatts, which makes it not just enough to service the domestic market, but also to tap into the export market as well. And this has come out because of strong support for domestic manufacturing. The R&D component is again very crucial. There is a lot of cutting edge innovations that are happening in solar cell efficiency. Our expectation is that as domestic manufacturing matures, especially on the back of the production linked incentive scheme, wherein a lot of players have come into vertically integrated solar module manufacturing sectors, we expect that the R&D will also accordingly take up very aggressively. We will see very good high quality module manufacturing in India in the days to come.
Mr. Tanja, lack of awareness amongst general public is another key challenge hindering the adoption of solar energy, or for that matter, any kind of renewable energy technique. How can this be tackled?
Well, this is actually a very important question. I use the term energy illiteracy. There is widespread energy illiteracy in our country, and especially when it comes to renewable energy. But I think with the kind of, schemes like this is all going to change. But as I said, that while the government comes out and, has taken this initiative, it's important that, we do whatever possible in order to A, engage the public opinion, B, of course, other ministries like the Ministry of Education, like the Ministry of Science and Technology, and also the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas and Industry. Involve them so that, we can fast track it. Distributed solar is something it has been waiting. I've always been of this thing, when are we going to really put focus on the distributed solar? Because for a country like India, distributed solar is actually solar. Whatever we have done so far, great. But I think what we are doing now, this is what we needed to do. So as they say in Hindi, der aaye, durust aaye. It's good that we are doing it. But I think in order to make sure that this moves faster, if we could involve, let's say, India's top 50 companies and make them also responsible, that you go engage the public opinion, help set up the Adarsh villages, besides what the government has already announced. I'm saying in addition to that. And we involve the local colleges and, as I said earlier, that would basically make a difference. But at the same time, use the communication, use television, use newspaper, use WhatsApp, use social media to educate people about this scheme and why this scheme is important. You see, when we set up a big factory in a city or in a rural area, that of course changes the economic landscape of that particular region. But here we are talking about it changing the economic landscape of the entire country in one go. Imagine it. And we are so blessed by sun. We are among the most blessed countries. In some places, quality of radiation may be an issue. But for this, it will not be a big issue because we are not talking of big plants. We are talking of rooftop. And again, we're talking of R&D, which is Indian, basically. So these things are going to be designed for Indian conditions. So therefore, it is very important. But as you rightly said, the important thing is that all policymakers, people are going to be responsible at district level, people are going to be responsible at state level, that they are also engaged with, trained, educated on all the issues. So this is going to be a Mahayagya in the sense that what the government has done great, but the benefits of this are tremendous if we are able to engage other stakeholders or make them realize that you are also a stakeholder and then push it through. This will create millions of jobs. This will change the landscape. And more importantly, this will make people, economically independent in rural areas. This is a thing which will change. We are finally going to have Gram Swaraj with this scheme. The one thing that can really deliver Gram Swaraj is this scheme.
Mr. Divyanshu Jha and Mr. Narendra Tanja, thank you so much for sharing your views on this very important issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Union Cabinet approval for PM-Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojna. The participants were Narendra Tanja, energy expert, and Divyanshu Jha, Deputy Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Anubha Rohatgi was moderating the discussion. The program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. The program is also available on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsgtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.